I personally don't think the ANC is quite aware that the gig is up, right? And by gig, I'm talking about the ANC enjoying the fact that the black voting majority of South Africa is basically playing to their tune, like what we've seen in the last 30 years or the last 3 decades, where the black majority, for the longest time, even if you weren't paying close attention, like there were just some signs here and there, like what we saw with the issue of Jacob Zuma. There were signs that, the things were not quite going in the right direction. But for most people, there was always hope that, no, the organization itself is still very much repairable. Like we can still rely on the ANC as an organization, and that even if there were bumps along the way, it was just a couple of bad apples that were trying to, bring the organization down. But I think what is happening now is that there's an entire shift that no, it's not just certain people, but potentially the organization itself is a factory fault. There's 2 issues that are just not going anywhere. In fact, I make the prediction that if ever we were to maybe say there's a shift in the way people are talking politics, these 2 issues become basically that point where the trends just go a different direction. And that is the issue of foreigners or the issue of illegal immigration, as well as the issue of corruption, especially in light of what General Mkhwanazi has brought, or his revelation. And the way that I view the illegal immigration sort of campaign, and led by the likes of Operation Dudula, and there's many other movements like Operation Dudula, by the way, just go to social media. I know the Patriotic Alliance has also been leading a lot of these sort of interventions. The way I look at it is that it's 100% economically driven, even if they don't say that it's economically driven. Because the problem is South Africa's economy has not been growing. So basically what's causing the tension is the fact that South Africans feel that they need to compete for limited or almost zero resources. Even here on this channel, I remember when I spoke on the issue of youth unemployment, I highlighted or showed a video where young people who are unemployed at this moment were saying to the news reporter that no, the reason why we are marching is because we want to go to the factory, take illegal immigrants, out of the factory, so we as South Africans can take that their place. Which is a clear signal that the reason why there's tension is because of economic issues. Then we get to the issue of Mkhwanazi, right? The way the conversation is going, yes, Mkhwanazi is still talking. I know there's a parliamentary ad hoc committee now. Madlanga is still kind of fresh. But you have to take note of this sort of I stand with Mkhwanazi tag, right? Within that tag, you are seeing a lot of people sort of coming up and saying, I stand with Mkhwanazi. What this is saying to me, this particular part of I stand with Mkhwanazi, and one, I must say that the ANC has to really take note. This I stand with Mkhwanazi thing is a real crisis for the ANC. A real crisis. One that is almost irreparable. They cannot reverse this crisis, right? It's at that level in terms of the damage that this is causing, not just on the particular people that Mkhwanazi is calling out, but on the organization itself. And the reason I say this is because people saying I stand with Mkhwanazi, in a nutshell, they're basically saying that I believe what Mkhwanazi is saying. I know that the evidence is coming in slowly but surely. We saw the screenshots of messages between WhatsApp messages and all of that. But people are saying, I believe what Mkhwanazi is saying. Meaning, what Mkhwanazi is saying is 100% plausible, right? But the plausibility of the revelations that Mkhwanazi is coming with is not just saying, it's plausible that that guy or Kat Matlala is a thug. It's plausible. I believe that. But people are linking this plausibility to the organization, which is the African National Congress in this case, as well as institutions that the ANC is in charge of, right? So when people observe what is happening in their communities, when they observe what's happening in the news, outside of what Mkhwanazi is saying, when they observe social media, which is constantly feeding us what's happening everywhere else, other provinces, the decay, right, which is one way to describe, right? All of the indicators are down, and unemployment is gender-based violence. So when people look at all of these things, it is 100% plausible what Mkhwanazi is saying. But like I said, the damage here is that it's plausible, not just on the individuals, but it's a plausible scenario that the African National Congress and all that it touches is the reason why things are the way that they are. And that is the real damage. I get that people keep saying, no, Mkhwanazi needs to come forward and present evidence. What people are seeing with their eyes is proving Mkhwanazi right 100%. People know in communities that there is no strong policing. People see what happens at police stations. People encounter these things in their day-to-day lives. Now you've got Mkhwanazi just helping them to piece the picture together. Like I said, it is serious damage. Meanwhile, like I highlighted in the beginning, it just doesn't look like the ANC has a grasp of the fact that it is crisis time.
The Bible itself speaks about Africa rising. That's in the middle of the 19th century. There's a very, very interesting, very learned, very moving response by Soga to an Englishman who was predicting death for his people, and Soga was saying, "You're wrong." I'm telling this story to say, really, this foundation, that's where it comes from. We come from that understanding among our people, which is very, very old, that South Africa is part of the continent. South Africa is part of the African diaspora. That's part of what hurts me when I see things like Operation Dudula. It hurts. We can't position ourselves as though we're enemies of other Africans. It's not right.
The real problem here is that it's just a bit too late. It's a bit too late to criticize the approach of Operation Dudula, whether or not you like it or not. It is a bit too late because what Mbeki is highlighting, the fact that no, South Africa exists in the African diaspora. The problem here is that the very same Africa diaspora, right? Once upon a time, there were borders, all of these institutions that are needed to make sure that the African diaspora can exist peacefully. Those things are broken on the side of South Africa. We don't have a border. We don't have an economy, right? Those two things are important because one, we need to secure what is sort of our portion of the African diaspora, and people need to feel that there's opportunities. People need to feel that they can build their lives here. With these two things that have completely collapsed under the leadership of the African National Congress, I'm afraid, Mbeki, it's a bit too late to criticize the approach of Operation Dudula. At this point, people are taking matters into their own hands, and I'm not 100% in favor of that. It's like mob justice. I do not believe that citizens need to get blood on their hands when in fact there's still things like elections and all of that. Yet I do understand where Operation Dudula and many like them are coming from, that for them they don't believe that it's going to happen anytime soon. That's why they're taking matters on their own hands. But unfortunately for Mbeki, again, out of touch, you need to grasp what is happening. It is too late to make these comments. And then another one, Bheki Cele, wherever he's been hiding, off he goes. Now that, there was in the last week, the ANC was mourning the passing of Natim Tet. I think he got a bit annoyed that people just were not really coming to the party. I don't know, maybe he wasn't feeling like the countries that in mourning. I don't know. But emotions were high. He went on to call South Africans inunu, in isiZulu. That's a word, isiZulu word, which basically means that South Africans are monsters. He went on to say that South Africans are, Sodom and Gomorrah, basically, calling that out. Meaning that South Africans are we are just so beyond that, we are just in need of some divine condemnation. Meaning there's just it's done for us. We just need to be wiped out because our conduct is so despicable, according to what Bheki Cele was trying to say here.
At least we are linda imzuzwana ethile ubadedele bakhala usungabuya ke ngelinye ilanga uzothi wafa nemali yami njalo. But I'm telling you, you just sit there and you say, these South Africans are mad. Bafundisi, ngiyanibuza ukuthi angikwazi nikhuphukele entabeni ngenitshela uThixo enze lento ayenze eSodoma naseGomora. I wouldn't mind. Enze lento ayenze eSodoma naseGomora. Because in Sodoma neGomora manje. South Africans ni Sodoma ne Gomorrah. Anina inhliziyo anambeza ni nunu.
And again, Bheki Cele, it is just too late to be finger wagging South Africans and saying, "Hey Nina, do this, don't do that." It's a bit too late. 3 decades have gone and passed, And people have just been way too patient with you guys. Way too patient. It's a bit too late. My last point here is just going to speak to the opposition, right? Because now the opposition has to be smart. It is now the time to really relook your strategy and just really be smart. And by opposition, I mean anyone but the ANC. If you're a political party participating or active in the South African situation and you're not the African National Congress, I'm talking to you. It's time to be smart. You do not want to be dragged down this sort of path with the ANC. Because what's still happening, and I mean, this is just my observation, I'm not saying it is Bible truth, but there is still elements where the media seems to jump at a chance to sort of drag other people down along the, corruption line or whatnot, right? And my understanding or my view of it is that the media is still pretty much stuck in that era of, majority ANC rule. I think for them, maybe that was a bit of they're still used to that. I think they still need to get used to a post-ANC majority. They're not there yet. But in the process, if you're opposition, don't allow your name to get dragged along with the ANC. Come up with a strategy, do PR, whatever, do interviews, be everywhere. You do not want to be linked to corruption, incompetence, and you don't want to be linked to the fact that the ANC has collapsed the country. Don't go down that path with them. Let them go down on their own. Because now that this is happening, and I think the ANC will wake up one day, but I can tell you now, these are my strong predictions, that people are done. But once people are done with the ANC, they're going to need options. And when people go out and start looking for options, you need to also think about how you're selling yourself to the South African public, right? And very important here is to understand that people make choices emotionally, right? I know in scientific marketing, I make this point a lot. Make the choice easy for people, right? They call it a system 1 and a system 2 brain. System 1 brain is the one that, is more impulsive, doesn't really spend too much time thinking about stuff, right? Therefore, you want to appeal to that brain, that system 1 brain, not system 2. Not the guy who's going to read your 160-page manifesto. That's not the guy, because that's not the majority. The system 1 thinker is the one that you need to appeal to. One way to do that is to talk to the emotional thing. Appeal to people emotionally. But when doing that, I don't mean refurbish this black versus white, white versus black narrative. That thing is done. People are sick and tired of that narrative. It's not believable anymore because of how it's just been exploited time and time again to excuse corruption. So that is done. Don't go there, right? Don't be, even if it's tempting, but just, it's not going to work. What you need to think about, right, is the fact that South Africa is facing multiple crises, right? Yes, I speak about the economy and all of that, but South Africa's social fabric is completely weak at this point, right? There's a safety crisis. There's a teenage pregnancy crisis. There's an alcohol crisis. People are not going to churches anymore. The social fabric is completely weak. Whenever I talk to my mother speaks about, sort of the good old days in sort of her experience. And one of the things she speaks about when they were young, she says, when we were young, is that a lot of people were in churches. People on Sundays went to church. And this is not necessarily to box people into a religion or anything like that, but you need to think about how do you play a role as a leader to fix and build on that social fabric, right? And it's not necessarily to box people in, and I know people think churches are all about oppressive mind and all of that. Think about it broadly. Churches are community. Churches are one of the ways in which people can build on the most important sort of more moral direction, right? That stuff is lacking. I don't care where you stand in sort of the spectrum, but that part is lacking, and we can all see that. So whether it's through churches, but you need to think about how do you play a role in inspiring strong communities, right? Whichever way you do that, those elements are emotional, and that stuff will help you to appeal to people, especially the majority, because the majority is directly impacted by these things, right? Donald Trump, as one example, right, as I dash out of here, people that analyzed his victory, right, post now the 2024 election, and also sort of the first term, his 2016 victory. People that have analyzed why Donald Trump became a hit in the way that he did. Of course, the media hates him a lot, but a lot of people on the ground in America admire Donald Trump a lot. And one of the things that have been raised by analysts that have analyzed his campaign is that Trump talks to the emotional stuff. That's where he got a lot of gain. On immigration, why Americans were able to link immigration, the crisis of immigration, to safety. They felt like if immigration stays high and borders do not become secure, that immediately impacts their safety. So Trump got a strong victory in that regard. Another thing was sort of his America First movement, right? Which means that if you're born in America, you have somewhere where you belong. That was a strong selling point. And in fact, it still has a lot of leverage till this very day because it creates that sense of belonging. It creates that sense of community. Those aspects are emotional. Speaking to service delivery, speaking to the economy is good and well. And like I said, that stuff is critical. That is the bedrock. It's important. But do not neglect the issue of social fabric. Do not neglect the opportunity to inspire people to be better, to inspire people to want to be, good to their fellow citizens, to inspire people to look away from crime, right? Because if all we want to do is grow an economy and have high GDP, low inflation, that's amazing, right? But without the necessary sort of emotional social fabric elements, that's how we end up having corruption. That's how we end up having people who are dishonest in how they run their businesses. Economic issues are important, but you also need to tap on the social fabric. That's how people are able to then believe in the future of that country. Because it's one thing to say, hey, you can get a really good job if you vote for me, but that job, I still have to exist somewhere, in a community somewhere. Before you go, just a quick reminder to hit like as well as subscribe to this YouTube channel. I look forward to seeing you guys again pretty soon.